All right, check this out. I started giving the price up front and my close rate skyrocketed. Look, you've probably been on a sales call as a prospect and there's this uneasy feeling of what the price is going to be, right? Like you want to know the price. Well, that's because inside of you, there's this like subconscious uneasiness that says, look, this is all great, but just tell me the price, right? The whole reason is because this is what salespeople are taught to do. They're taught to not share the price until the very end. Well, here's what I've realized, and that is this is completely wrong advice. And so in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly when I personally share the price in the sales process and why I feel it works for me. But before I do, let me tell you how I realized what I was doing was completely wrong. So I'm on a sales call with a prospect and I follow the traditional process of, giving lots of value and of course stalling every single time the prospect says, hey Jason, so again, what is the price? And I stall and I push it back as long as I possibly can. Because I'm trying to reveal the price until, this magic moment at the very end when, of course, I feel like I've built up enough value to justify the price, to justify what I'm about to charge them. Well, the problem with this approach for me, maybe this problem for your approach for you as well, is that on a 60-minute Zoom sales call, I was waiting until minute 50 to share the price. And then the prospect tells me, look, Jason, you're just way too expensive. So then what I do? I follow my 3-step handling objection process to, of course, resolve the objection and close again. And then the prospect says, look, Jason, I just need to think about it. And he says this, of course, around minute 55. So what am I supposed to do, right? The best thing I can do at that moment versus try to debate and close again is to actually schedule the follow-up meeting because right now I'm out of time before we both have to get off for our next meeting. So then what happens? Well, about 50% of those prospects end up canceling the next meeting with me and sending me an email saying, look, Jason, I found a cheaper alternative. So I decided to do the opposite, right? I was tired of hearing about those excuses from my prospects. And so I decided to do the opposite. I pulled a George Costanza. Remember in Seinfeld where he decides to have the opposite and he all of a sudden gets the dates and gets the girls, just gets the job, all because he does the opposite of what his instincts say. So that's what I did. I pulled a George Costanza and I did the opposite of what I normally do. I gave the price in the beginning of the sales process versus waiting until the very end. So in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly when I gave the price in the process, and then you can tell me in the comments below if your conversion rate goes up if you give the price early on in the sales process, again, following how I, of course, did it myself, or if it goes down. Like either way, just let's experiment and let's learn and grow and let's figure this out. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jason Forrest, CEO of FPG.com, where we recruit, train, and build the best sales teams who want to be known for as having the best sales experience in the industry. I do these videos because I don't want you to waste your money on bad sales advice. So I want to offer you advice that's better for free. So I live by these 15 beliefs of selling that I created in my book, Warrior Selling, as well as in our training program, Warrior Selling. I believe it's important that every salesperson, again, lives by some sort of ethos. Every human needs to live by some sort of ethos. And again, this is what I've created. So it's 15 different beliefs. And so right now I'm going to share with you one of those beliefs. And that's my definition of selling. Our definition of selling is to give certainty plus education with a foundation of rapport. So when I held off giving the price until the end, I was breaking one of my core beliefs. Let me explain. If the prospect is on the edge, wondering what the price is going to be, they're uneasy and therefore lack certainty. So even though I could try to educate them on my value, I was out of rapport. Rapport is being on the same page with them, right? I was out of rapport with them because they just wanted to know the price as soon as possible. So they were tuning out all the things that I was telling them, all the education I was giving them. They were just tuning it out because they wanted to know the price as soon as possible. So in order to follow my own definition of selling, of giving certainty plus education with a foundation of rapport, I needed to give them the price in the first 10 minutes of the conversation. So I tried it. I gave the prospect the price early on, and then I had a new problem. The prospect got argumentative on how expensive I was, and of course, I got defensive and lost the sale. So that didn't work either, because once again, I was out of rapport. Rapport is so important, right? When rapport is lost, all is lost. So I was out of rapport with the prospect, and so I tried a different approach. I tried a whole new approach, and I nailed it this time. So what I'm about to share with you works very well for me to close deals a lot of the times on the first call, the very first sales call. And these are high ticket purchases. And most of the time I can close something in 3 calls or less. And so again, all of these sales are big ticket items: recruiting, training contracts, etc. So here is what I do after some initial discovery. First, I ask the prospect, what's the price that they've been quoted by my competition, and how that compares to what they were expecting to pay. Like, this isn't important. So again, pay attention, right? So when I ask them what the competition was quoting, I now have a baseline of comparison, and then I want to compare that to what they were expecting to pay. Because sometimes they're expecting to pay even less than what my competition is charging. So I need to understand, again, what they think it's going to cost, what they expect to pay, and what other people are charging. I asked that very early on. So here's the deal. We happen to be $10,000 more on average than what the competition is charging, which is about 66% more expensive than what they're charging. 66% more expensive. So maybe that applies to you, right? How much more expensive are you than what your competition is charging? In our case, we're 66% more expensive. So the second thing that I do is I say, suppose I can get you everything you were asking for, but it will cost you $10,000 more than what XYZ, our competition, quoted you, and $15,000 more than what you were expecting to pay. So again, in this case, they were expecting to pay even less than what the competition was charging. And I would say, how would you feel about that? Well, the prospect usually responds in one of 3 ways. Number 1, they'll say, look, that's outrageous, and they'll eventually, of course, hang up on me. Number 2, they will say, look, this is completely out of my budget. Or number 3, they're going to say, look, you better be doing something completely different to justify a price like that. That's it. Those are the 3 responses that you're going to get. So, sales warriors, check this out. Here is the good news. You're probably thinking, Jason, what's the good news in that? Well, here's the good news. All 3 of those responses are perfect. Let me explain. If the prospect hangs up on you, you just got 50 minutes of your life back, which is important, right? Because time is more important than money, right? We can only have so much time in the day, and so we got to use our minutes very wisely. And so if they hang up immediately because you're that much more expensive and it's just way out of their paradigm and they don't even want to hear the pitch, they're not going to be a good client for you anyway. So you got 15 minutes of your life back to go make some real money, which is awesome. And so here's the deal. Even though in my experience, this only happens less than 5% of the time, it's pretty cool, right? It's pretty cool that you're going to, again, be able to eliminate them very quickly. So you're more likely to not get that response. You're actually more likely to get the second response, that is that you're out of their budget, or the third response that we better be doing something better to justify the price. So again, that's great. I personally love both of these responses because I know when I follow my process, again, we have a 12-step process we teach. When I follow my 12-step process, I can either get them to increase their budget or show them why we charge 66% more than the competition, and they see the value. They get it. And unlike before, when I only had 10 minutes to handle the objection, I now have 50 minutes to handle the price objection. So here are 2 things that I do to get them to increase their budget or pay 66% more than me. Step 1, I master the power of desensitization. Yeah, fun word. Just think about the first time you saw a scary movie. I remember when I was a kid, I saw Nightmare on Elm Street. Remember that with the guy with it's like a Willy Wonka scary cousin or something. He had like the Freddy Krueger, right? He had like the knives coming out of his gloves. And so I was terrified of that the first time that I saw it. But the second time I saw it, it wasn't so scary. And then the third time, fourth time, fifth time, eventually it became kind of laughable. Well, this is called desensitization. It happens all the time when you scary movies or a roller coaster, whatever it is. First time you fired a gun, it was super scary, and then it became not scary. Well, the famous psychologist Maslow, who created Maslow's hierarchy of needs, he came up with another term called duplication. So duplication is a form of psychology where if you do something over and over again, you duplicate it or you desensitize it, and it removes the charge around it. So like, for example, Maslow tells this phenomenal story about He was trying to help a kid overcome a stuttering problem that he had. And so he said, hey, stuttering kid, what we're going to do is we're going to put you in this play, and you're going to play a role of a kid who stutters. But here's the catch. The kid stutters even more than you do in real life. So I need you to stutter even more, exaggerate it, even more. Eventually, as you can imagine, he stopped stuttering. Maslow was able to completely cure stuttering because it wasn't something physical that was a problem, it was more mental or psychological. Well, that's the power of duplication. And that power of duplication you can use when you sell. So when you're talking with a prospect, you would say, hey, suppose I could find for you a home, a CRM, a recruiting service, etc., whatever you're selling, that had all the things that you wanted, but it cost you $10,000 more than you're expecting to pay. Again, insert however much you charge more. How would you feel about that? So at this moment, they're either going to say, hell no, and hang up on you, or they're going to say they can't afford it, or they're going to say, I don't think it's worth it. Then you move on to step two. So step two is value stacking. So this is where you break down all of the parts of your product and service, and you keep calling back to the value of it. So let's say you're selling a home. And so you would break apart the home decision into a lot of little decisions, such as the home, the backyard, the neighborhood, the part of town, etc. Then you would call back each time by saying, hey, so we first started, you said that $10,000 was more than you wanted to spend. But now that you get to have the floor plan that you were wanting, that has the kitchen that you wanted, and you said it's better than XYZ competitor that you were looking at, how do you feel about spending $10,000 more now? So here's the deal. They're either going to say, yeah, I feel good about it, or they're going to say no. If they say no, then you keep value stacking. You do the same thing. Now you show them the home site. Hey, Mr. Customer, you said that you weren't sure about paying $10,000 more, but now you're able to have the home that you want and the backyard that you said you're looking for in the following reasons. So now I'm curious, how do you feel about paying $10,000 more now? And again, they're going to say no, or they're going to say maybe, whatever they say. But they're going to keep, you're going to desensitize it. You're going to keep value stacking again until they say yes. So check this out. By having them verbally talk about it over and over again, they will desensitize it on their own just by talking about it. Isn't that cool? Just think about like the first time that you experienced coronavirus and you had to put a mask on or whatever it was. You know, it became something that was really annoying for you. You had a lot of charge around it, but the more you talked about it, the more it just kind of became second nature. And that's just what happens. So again, at first, the prospect might say, hell no. And you're gonna say, no problem, let's keep going. And then that's pretty cool, right? So then here's the deal. Then that hell no will turn into no, and then it'll turn into probably, and then it'll turn into probably not, and then it'll turn into I'm not sure, and then it's gonna turn into maybe, and then it's gonna turn into possibly, and then it's gonna turn into I think so, and then eventually it's gonna turn into yes, and here's the catch. And then the last one, which is it's a no-brainer. So again, every time you call back and you value stack, you're gonna see it progress, again, from that hell no all the way to yes, it's a no-brainer. So then what I do is I make it a game. This keeps me motivated when they say hell no, or they say no, or there's no way. And what I do is I just kind of check it off, right? I make it a game, and I just know that I'm gonna keep duplicating it, desensitize it until they get to the point of saying yes. So right now, I want you to imagine how many more sales you're going to make when you shift your whole process, your whole mentality, and you pull a George Costanza, just like me, and you do the opposite of what everyone else is normally doing by waiting till the very end to share the price, and you have no time to really desensitize it. And so you're gonna do the opposite. Pull George Costanza, and you're gonna bring the price up front. This one single approach not only increased my conversion rate, but also it allowed me to speed up my sales cycle time. So before I give you one last bonus tip, yeah, that's kind of cool. One more bonus tip. Just remember that your buyers are desensitizing the price all the time. So just think about the first time you realized how expensive a vacation was, or a car, and now you just kind of accept it, right? It just becomes like, oh yeah, that's how much it costs. Well, at first you were super against it, and now you tolerate it and you accept it. This is the power of duplication or desensitization. But here's a warning. When you commit to this approach, you must follow through with it to the very end. Do not take your prospect from a hell no to a maybe and then hand them off to your biggest competitor. So when you do this, you've just literally like laid it up for them, right? Because the competitor now gets to start them at a maybe and then take them to a yes or it's a no-brainer. You've literally just like teed it up. You've just done the hardest part, and then now your competitor gets to make all the money. You do the work and they get paid. So don't do that. Until next time, this is Jason Forrest. Push yourself to become a better version of you.